Why do you do the things that you do, the things that you enjoy? What drives your behavior and motivates you to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish? In this next section on motivation and emotion, we're going to take a look at the different motivational theories that exist for why people are driven to do the different behaviors and actions that they commit on a regular basis, and how do we experience emotions? What are the things that happen physically inside of our body that lead us to feel the different emotions that we can experience? There are a whole lot of different theories when it comes to motivation, and a couple of specific areas like hunger that we can take a look at and see what drives us to eat when we need to. So let's start first with a holistic look at motivation. There are a wide variety of theories that talk about why people do the things that they do. The first one is known as drive reduction theory. And drive reduction theory says that we are driven to behaviors that allow us to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis being balance within the body. So if we are out of balance in some way, we are going to be driven to find that balance. So if we are hungry, we're going to eat. If we're tired, we're going to sleep. From one of the most basic viewpoints when it comes to motivation, drive reduction theory can explain a lot of the different behaviors we see someone engage in, because we can try to maintain homeostasis and get that internal state. Outside of those more biological needs, we also have what's known as arousal theory, and this one suggests that we are motivated to maintain an optimal level of arousal. Everyone has an arousal level that allows them to perform at an optimal or an elite level, and we want to try and find that and keep ourselves in that as often as possible. This goes along with a theory by two psychologists named Yerkes and Dodson, and this law states that performance increases with arousal up to a certain point, and then afterwards we are going to see performance decrease. So it is sort of an inverted U theory that we can see here, that if we are doing a task that is not engaging enough, we are going to be essentially bored and not perform well at it. But if it is too difficult, we are also going to experience anxiety that is not going to be productive for our performance as well. We need to find that center zone where we are both going to be optimally challenged and we are going to see our performance at its peak. Now, this is going to be different from person to person and sometimes from task to task. If you're doing something particularly easy, for example, chances are you can have more activation in your environment and you're still going to be able to accomplish your task. Think about if today you were going to do some simple addition problems, you could probably be listening to music or having a conversation and still be able to successfully answer those questions. In fact, if it was too quiet and there was not enough activation, you might be so bored you might not perform well at all. But if something is more difficult, having all of that extraneous activation in your environment might cause you to get to that overload point where you can no longer function optimally. And so you might need to lower the amount of external activation, make the environment quieter so you can think clearly and focus in order to answer those questions and be successful at what you do. Again, we all have different tasks that are going to put us in that optimal level of arousal, and we have different levels depending on the circumstances. But this theory says that that is what motivates us. That's what drives our behavior to get us to where we need to go. Now, there are some things that we do purely out of enjoyment, and that goes along with what's known as the self-determination theory. And this focuses on intrinsic motivation, meaning we're not getting any kind of external reward, whether it's money or grades, to do what we do, but instead because we are genuinely interested and enjoy doing that task, that it promotes our own personal growth and well-being, and that is why we engage in it. So think about the things that you like to do, that even if you didn't get paid for it or if you didn't get graded for it, you would still be interested in pursuing. On the other side, we have incentive theory that suggests that sometimes what we do is purely for those external rewards or avoiding punishment. And that comes down to extrinsic motivation, where we are engaged in activity in order to get something out of it. And sometimes that's just the case, that there is an activity or a task, maybe even a class, that if we weren't getting a grade for it or some kind of external reward, we would not be intrinsically motivated enough to pursue it. and so we need that external reward to motivate us. And then we have instinct theory, which we don't see happen very often in humans, but we see happen a lot more in other organisms like animals, where we see innate fixed action patterns in an organism in a response to some kind of stimuli. This would be something like a mating dance that we might see from certain birds, or any kind of behavior that again is purely unlearned. And so those are our major motivation theories. But sometimes we don't know what we want to do because we are in conflict when it comes to motivation. Lewin's motivational conflict theories address this by exploring different options that we have to choose between that sometimes make it difficult for us to move forward. There are different types of motivational conflicts, the first being an approach conflict. That is when we have to choose between two desirable outcomes. That would be as simple as, do you want cake or cookies for dessert? If both sound great to you, it might be hard to choose between them. An avoidance conflict is choosing between two undesirable alternatives. Let's say if you get in trouble and your parents let you choose your punishment. Would you rather be grounded for a week, or would you rather not have your car keys for a month? Those are two undesirable outcomes that you might have difficulty choosing between. And then we have approach avoidance conflicts, where you're choosing between things that have both good and bad factors to them. This could be something like choosing between two different colleges that you want to go to. One might have a better location, but maybe the program of study isn't as strong as another one, where that program is very strong, but you're not a big fan of where that school is located. Because they both have pros and cons to them, that is referred to as an approach avoidance or a multiple approach avoidance conflict. And have you ever seen someone engage in behavior and wonder, why on earth would they do that? Some people have a need for stimulation, and so they might seek out behaviors that allow them to feel fulfilled. Whether that's thrill seeking or adventure seeking, they get some kind of excitement out of it that drives and motivates their behavior. For some people, this might allow them to feel disinhibited, where they have a lowering of their inhibitions from their normal day-to-day life. Or maybe they're just simply trying to avoid boredom. If they have high boredom susceptibility, they might need to seek out greater and greater thrill-seeking activities in order to overcome that. There are some behaviors that we all engage in, like eating, for example. We have to eat to live, that can be explained from a wide variety of motivational factors as well. There are a lot of biological factors involved in hunger motivation. If you remember way back in the biology unit, we discussed some of the biology that influences when we feel hungry and have that desire to eat. Ghrelin, for example, is the hunger hormone that we see an increase in when we are hungry. Leptin, on the other hand, we see an increase in when we are full. So these two hormones can send messages to our pituitary gland and therefore the hypothalamus in our brain to signal when we are experiencing hunger and when we're experiencing fullness, to tell us when we should start eating and when we should stop eating. And speaking of biological processes, the last thing we're going to take a look at today is emotion, and why do we experience, or how do we experience, the different emotions that we do. There is a whole lot that goes on both internally and externally when it comes to emotions. We can see the emotions on someone's face. That's referred to as their affect, being able to see those facial expressions. But there's also internal factors that are going to play a role as well, like motivation and desires and environmental influences that can affect our emotions, all that are going to play a role here in the experience of the emotions that we have. When it comes to experiencing emotion, people focus primarily on two areas, the physiological and the cognitive experience. Physiological experiences are going to be those bodily experiences. What's happening inside of your body? For example, if you are driving down the street and see a car's headlights coming directly towards you, the heart racing, the fight or flight response that kicks in, the perspiration that you feel that is accompanied by the emotion of fear. Whereas the cognitive label is going to be identifying those different physiological responses that allow you to experience the emotion that you feel. In some cases, the physiological might be very similar for different emotions. For example, heart racing could be because of fear, but it could also be because of excitement. So cognitive labels allow us to identify, I am feeling this way, that is then going to lead us to experience that particular emotion. And cognitive appraisal is looking at the situation itself. What is it about this situation that could lead us to experience a specific emotion? For example, a job interview. If someone has a cognitive appraisal of, I need this job, it's so important to me, the emotion that they might feel is going to be more nervous than someone who says, I don't really care about this job, but let's just see how this interview goes. Their cognitive appraisal is going to change their emotional response to the exact same situation. Last but not least, emotion research also focuses on facial expressions, because facial expressions are universal. While we don't all show our facial expressions to the same degree or the same amount, sometimes that can be cultural. These are display rules that we follow. We all still can see and identify different facial expressions because of their universality. Sometimes our emotions are brought on by different situational forces. When that happens, those are referred to as elicitors. They are eliciting specific emotions. However, you can also lead yourself to feeling specific emotions via the facial feedback hypothesis. So for example, if you force yourself to smile more, even when you're not particularly happy, assuming your facial muscles in that expression of a smile can actually lead to your body identifying that facial expression as happiness and can actually increase your happiness levels that you feel internally. So next time you're feeling unhappy, try it out, smile even if you don't feel like it, and see if it can actually have an effect on your mood. As you can see, there are a lot of different theories for both motivation and emotion. What drives our behavior and the forces behind our emotions that we experience, there are tons of them. I really encourage you to consider them as you go throughout your own day and look at why you're making decisions about what you're going to do and why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. Is it something physically you feel in your body? Are you having to label that physiology in order to experience an emotion? Or are you looking at the situation itself and appraising it, and that is leading to the emotion that you are specifically experiencing? There's so many different ways that you can look at it and approach it. It often varies from person to person. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember, be kind to your mind.